Cruel and wild disease, coquettish beauty versus ruthless and crazy criticism, playboy and drag master, marriage before love, the fierce competition between wolves and foxes is not good. Everyone knows that the young master Shen in the capital, who is fierce and promiscuous, loves to play, one day married his deceased rival and went home. Everyone thinks he's crazy. Crazy enough, there's no such thing as marrying a dead person. The unparalleled demon queen in the capital, with a charming smile and a beautiful physique, proud and beautiful, has countless enemies, and is always remembered by her mortal enemies when she dies. And when she woke up, she had a handsome and wealthy husband. He said, "You lost your memory in a car accident. I am your husband, legal husband. You can swipe your card casually, and play around casually." Jiang Zhiwan raised his eyebrows. Heaven sent pies. No, she just felt that this was like a warning from the Prince of Yen, talking nonsense. There is fraud, there must be fraud. Jiang Zhiwan, as soon as he arrived, would settle down and obediently become his little wife. She ate and drank well, and worked hard to find her own background. However, on the night she first went to the bar, someone caught her back. She was held in his arms by him, and the man's tone was gloomy and thick. "I don't care about you, do you really think you don't have my husband?" Jiang Zhiwan said, "Let you pant and not pant. I want to see your abdominal muscles, but you don't show them. You." The next second, before she could finish speaking, someone picked her up and said, "My husband is satisfied with you." Keywords of the novel. Wildness preference without pop-ups, wildness preference for downloading the complete set of TXT, wildness preference for reading the latest chapters. Chapter 1. The wealthy young master marries a dead man. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. The wealthy young master marries a dead man. Jiang Zhiwan never expected that at the moment of her death, her arch-nemesis would announce their intention to marry her. Was he crazy or was he crazy? Weibo hot search has been explosive and explosive. #explosive. The richest young master in the capital married a dead man. ##. How unique are the peerless demon maidens who are famous in the capital. Even if he dies, he will still be remembered by the playboy. Jiang Zhiwan has just come out of the operating room and entered the intensive care unit. She is in the late stage of heart disease and cannot find a suitable source of heart. Even if she is found, her life will not be long. The Jiang family wandered and watched at the entrance of the ward one after another. The doctor asked next to her if anyone wanted to go in and take a look. The critical illness notice had already been issued, and perhaps she wouldn't be able to survive today. Everyone who wanted to go in and take a look didn't answer the doctor's question, just chatting on their own. "Have you bought the cemetery yet? What should we do about the aftermath? What kind of cemetery to buy? Just bury it in the wilderness and wilderness. What are you doing with that money for her?" Jiang Zhiwan's stepmother and sister discussed these matters, but Jiang's father only frowned and did not speak. Jiang Zhiwan, who was in the intensive care unit, listened attentively to everything outside. "That's right, Jiang Zhiwan is not worth it." At this moment, the silent Jiang father spoke up, "I have already thought about Xiao Ruan's affairs. It should be in the cemetery on the back mountain. It cannot be in the wilderness, where so many outsiders are watching. If we hastily handle it, how will others evaluate our Jiang family?" After Jiang Zhiwan's death, he did not enter the ancestral hall of the Jiang family. Although his surname was Jiang, he was never welcomed by the Jiang family. The Jiang family had a scholarly background and never accepted such a beautiful yet well-known daughter. The tombstone of Jiang Zhiwan should be erected in the ancestral hall of my Shen family. Just as they were discussing, a lazy and scattered voice came from afar. The man stood not far from the hallway outside the ward, leaning against the wall, with a lazy and reckless energy scattered throughout his body. His eyes seemed scattered and unremarkable, but upon closer inspection, they were filled with a fierce and distant coldness. He is a wild wolf, and if he is not careful, he will be burned to ashes by the smoke and flames on his body. Everyone present was stunned. It's so difficult to handle, let me handle it. He spoke lightly again, looking at them with dark eyes, clearly with a smile in his words, exuding a dark and nerve-piercing grayness that was oppressive and chilling. Who doesn't know Shen, the crown prince of the capital? The young master of the Shen family. The Shen family is the richest man in the capital. Due to their old age, they indulged this young master excessively and raised such a proud and arrogant son. Shen, Master Shen, Zhang's father took a deep breath and frowned slightly. This kind of joke can't be made. Shen is a well-known mixed-world demon king, and it is not surprising to meddle in such matters. But Jiang Zhiyuan and Shen never fought each other, fighting to the death. Now that Jiang Zhiyuan is about to die, he said he wants Jiang Zhiyuan to be in the Shen family ancestral hall. Who would believe that? Am I joking? Jiang Zhiyuan is not a member of the Shen family, how could he possibly be in the Shen family ancestral hall? The man smiled and casually lit a cigarette, his eyebrows and eyes slightly lowered. He took a puff of the cigarette ring before lifting his eyes, showing a wild and lazy demeanor. He dusted his cigarette ash slowly, with a seductive tone and spoke, "Who said it's not? I'll marry her right away, she's the young lady of my Shen family." What? Absurdity. It's simply absurd. Jiang Zhiyuan's younger sister was clenched tightly with her fists, biting fiercely on her teeth. Why? If the Shen family wants to marry the Jiang family, why should he marry a dead person instead of her? She, Jiang Zhiyuan, is on the brink of death, still trying to grab the limelight. When Shen entered the ward, Jiang Zhiyuan's eyes stared straight at him. The man looked at her with his eyes, and various instruments were connected to her hands and body, all of which were used to prolong her life. Now, it's as long as she can live. She is no longer as bright and reckless as before, suffering from illness, and her face is pale. But even if he dies, he can still be considered a beautiful corpse. The man looked at her and smiled, lifted his leg and hooked a chair over, sitting by her bed. They're all dying, are you still staring at me? He casually crossed his legs and looked at her with his eyebrows and eyes, saying, I married you on your deathbed. It's your blessing, so that you won't even get married in your lifetime. Ha! Jiang Zhiyuan sneered from the bottom of his heart, waiting for cancer to take her away. This dog thing can make her angry in minutes. Blessing. In the late stage of cancer, Jiang Zhiyuan originally wanted to die and stay away from the big injustice of the Jiang family, but now, Shen said he wanted to marry her. I didn't expect that at such a time, he would have to find an opportunity to insult her. I must have wanted to marry her, let her enter her house, and let her die without even a cemetery. The group of people from the Jiang family intentionally put this man in her ward, hoping to anger her immediately and take the huge wealth in her hands. Her breathing was rapid, and her eyes looked at Shen as if saying, even if I die, I won't marry you. Shen squinted his eyes and after fighting for so many years, his gaze was mixed in with hers. The man leaned against the back of the chair and snorted, neither cold nor indifferent, Jiang Zhiyuan, you still have to marry this marriage. Even if you immediately breathe out now, I will still marry your body back. I am a possessive person. You are my arch-nemesis, and I can only bully you. Even if you die, you have to die with me, understand? Jiang Zhiyuan's eyes fixed on him, feeling as if he was holding him down for a moment. His chest was filled with anger, and he was now like a withered grass, easily grasped by others. Her heart was failing, and the ventilator was almost unable to supply her breathing. A feeling of drowning surrounded her from all directions. She looked at him, her gaze gradually becoming blurred. Men are still full of energy, with delicate eyebrows and eyes, slightly raised at the end of their eyes. The slender and deep eye shape can be affectionate and gentle, casual and indifferent, and has an extremely strong and sharp feeling. But now, no matter how much she looked at him, she couldn't tell his usual stubbornness and arrogance, and she couldn't see through his gaze at all. She never imagined that the last person she would see before death would be Shen. Jiang Zhiwan was in a state of impatience, spitting out a mouthful of blood, and his oxygen mask turned blood red. The instrument sounded an alarm with a beep. The man stared at her, slowly closing his eyes and falling asleep peacefully. He looked at the instrument that was detecting the heart, and there was a cold straight line. Shen Shiya's eyebrows and eyes furrowed. After a while, he took out his phone and dialed a number. "Come in." The staff came in. "Bring your household registration book and all necessary procedures." Marriage registration was successful at the hospital, the seal was stamped, and 2 bright red notebooks were handed over to the man. It seems that joy and sorrow are intertwined and scattered, but the entire ward is filled with a sense of stillness. The man looked down at his marriage certificate, which showed the 2 of them in a white shirt and a red background. Both the man and the woman smiled brightly. Especially for women, their eyebrows and eyes are delicate, their red lips rise and fall, their smiles are bright and charming, and their beauty is both sophisticated and mysterious. I can't see at all that this photo is a composite of P. The man lightly touched the woman in the photo with his fingertips and chuckled, "Soft and soft, you are indeed very beautiful." "It's soft, not wan. She is indeed very soft." He pinched her waist on the swaying dance floor, stroked her legs, pinched her neck against her in the alley at night, and pulled at her delicate hair in the bookstore across the bookshelf. He stared at this photo for a long, long time. Shen Shiya slowly raised his eyes and spoke calmly, low and deep. "Jiang Zhiwan was registered with me before he passed away, wasn't he?" The staff stood next to him and nodded nervously, "Yes, yes." The man stood up from the chair and said, "Then take the young lady home. The mountain villa is remote but quiet." The evening breeze was blowing incessantly, accompanied by a soft drizzle. The dense rain was blowing on the man's face. Shen Shiya, holding Jiang Zhiwan in his arms, quickly walked into the villa. Her face was drenched in rain, and her hair was also slightly wet, followed by some servants behind her. He placed the little woman in his arms in the luxurious king bedroom and immediately ordered, "Bring a dry towel." To the surprise of the servant, the young master meticulously and gently wiped the raindrops on a corpse. "What are you looking at?" Shen Shiya rolled his Adam's apple and said, "Get out of here." The servants rolled away one after another. He changed Jiang Zhiwan's clothes, his eyes were thick and sticky, staring straight at her face. He slowly raised his hand and gently caressed her face, his low-pitched voice slightly hoarse. "Soft, how good would it be to be so obedient when awake? It's not his archenemy, but his wife in his arms and a treasure in his palm." And it was also at this moment that the phone rang. Father Shen called. As soon as he picked it up, there was a fierce scolding from the other side. "Shen Shiya, what kind of demon are you doing? You can just leave it unattended and the hot search will fly everywhere. You married a dead person to my Shen family and come back. Did you get my consent? You're really going to anger me. Dad, don't you want me to marry someone who is dignified and elegant, obedient, and will never have any problems? I think Jiang Zhiwan is pretty good, lying there motionless, dignified and elegant enough, and won't cause any trouble for me." Shen Shiya. The man responded calmly, unaffected by his anger, and continued, "I've married everyone, except for the wedding. She's the young lady of the Shen family. Damn it. All right. Shen's mother tried to dissuade her, "The child is only 22, so you're pushing him so hard." "I don't blame him for doing this. It was you who doted on him so much that he did such an unconventional thing." Shen Shiya smiled and said, "How could you betray the teachings? Jiang Zhiwan married him while he was alive, so why did I marry a dead person?" His lazy voice carried a hint of coldness to the end. "The last thing I want is that my family doesn't welcome my wife and she's gone. Shen, even if Jiang Zhiwan wants to get married, she still wants to marry her fiancé Mu Sicheng. Mu Sicheng has already come to the Shen family to ask for someone. Please handle this matter for me and don't bring any mess to my house. I must give the Mu family an explanation. The man couldn't help but tighten his phone as he listened to this. His eyes darkened and he quickly sneered contemptuously, lazily leaning against the railing next to him. If someone surnamed Mu dares to think about the young lady of the Shen family, shouldn't they give me an explanation? End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Various, random. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Various, random. His tone of speech, naturally lazy and unrestrained, is particularly pleasant to listen to, but also carries a wild roughness, somewhat distant and indifferent, and very emotionless. Looking at the entire capital, no one can be so horizontal as him. After speaking, Shen hung up the phone directly. Looking at the woman lying in the room behind her. She lay quietly, with a sickly pale face that could not conceal her already stunning beauty. She was charming and unparalleled in the world, but now it was his. As he watched, a smile flickered from the corner of his lips. The smile climbed all the way to the bottom of his pitch-black eyes, to his delicate eyebrows. It was an extremely evil and deep obsession. He is like this, dirty on the surface and dirty on the inside. He is a vicious and vicious villain, and he is like a ruthless thief. Whoever gets it first belongs to him. He just wants Jiang Zhiwan to die tirelessly. The man walked slowly to her bedside, bent down, and his slender hand touched her cheek. His fingertips touched her lips, and his usually wild eyebrows and eyes seemed to be tinged with a touch of pity and warmth. You may not be too good, but you cannot be someone else's. It can only be his. Jiang Zhiwan's temperament is not very well behaved or too soft. She has a beautiful skin, a beautiful and proud body, and is both fierce and wild. She is no less ruthless than Shen. Indeed, it is impossible to take down rebellious individuals like Jiang Zhiwan and Shen, unless they voluntarily do so. The popularity of Weibo has been going on for a week, and now almost everyone in the country knows that Shen married a dead person. Some say it was a libertine son who calmed down, while others say it was marrying a dead person to go home and perfunctory for the family. The daughter-in-law cannot control it, and there is still an explanation to the family, and he can do whatever he wants. But Shen doesn't care about these things at all, acting recklessly. He will always be the person who interprets these words to the fullest. Shen and Jiang Zhiwan left the country and disappeared from the public's view. This incident gradually became forgotten by people. In the dark, someone flew into a rage and remembered her in their heart. Jiang Zhiwan, if you want to see a corpse or a person, she must disappear from this world for me. Find her for me. 1 month later. Country. The streets here are densely clustered with flowers, and the scenery is pleasant. The bicycles jingle in the alleys, making it particularly melodious and long. The scorching summer sun shines brightly, shining through the flowers by the window and scattering on the large bed of the villa, casting a myriad of golden lights. The person on the bed was sleeping soundly, her face was pure and fair, her eyelashes were long, her eyebrows and eyes were moderately thick and light, her spirit was clear and delicate, she was as delicate as a work of art. At this moment, the man pushed the door and came in from outside, holding a basin of water and a towel. He sat by the bedside, with a slender and straight figure, hanging his eyes on a wet towel, wringing it dry, and as usual, took off Jiang Zhiwan's clothes and wiped his body. The woman is soft and charming, and his movements are particularly gentle, afraid of damaging her. He raised his eyes and looked at the calendar by the bedside. Based on the medicinal days, she should also wake up. He sat quietly by the bed, holding a notebook in his hand to handle work. His temperament was noble, but his eyebrows and eyes were very wolf-like. Combining such a complex, wild, and cold noble temperament, it was very eye-catching. Under the mottled shadows of trees, time is quiet and long, and a gentle breeze blows in from outside the window, carrying a relaxed and lazy feeling. The gentle breeze brushed against her cheeks, causing Jiang Zhiwan's eyelashes to tremble. She slowly opened her eyes and, under the strong light, she squinted in discomfort, raised her hand to cover them, and let out 2 moans. And it was these 2 sounds that made Shen Shiye's whole body stiffen for a moment. He lifted his eyes to look at her. She had adapted to the light and slowly took away her hand that was blocking the light. Her eyes were hazy and bleary, but more delicate than the scorching sun outside. He was slightly stunned, with a feeling of being separated from the world. She got up halfway from the bed, propped her hands on the bed, and the blanket slid down to her waist, with full and smooth lines on her waist. Even if she sleeps for a month and loses weight, she still has a natural beauty and a national charm. She is truly a woman known as the peerless demon queen. Beauty lies in her bones, not in her skin. Jiang Zhiwan is a beautiful woman. Their gaze met, and his dark eyes were deep. Looking at Jiang Zhiwan, he remained silent with a hint of inscrutability and uncertainty in his eyes. Jiang Zhiwan's beautiful eyes were puzzled as she looked at the man in front of her, feeling very unfamiliar. He looked Shen Shiye up and down, only to find that he was his mother handsome man. His facial features are very straight, with deep eye sockets, sexy thin lips, tight jawbones, and sexy Adam's apple lines. His facial features are particularly delicate and upright. The standard model of a manga face, with eyes that are full of flirtation even without a smile, inexplicably tinged with desire. Jiang Zhiwan unconsciously swallowed his saliva and grabbed the bedsheet tightly. She pulled her lips and smiled, a particularly bright and soft smile, but with a hint of cunning and coquettishness, saying, "Sir, are you?" I heard her ask so. Shen Shiye's tense heart relaxed slightly. I breathed a sigh of relief all over. The medicine is working. He fed her medicine, made her feign death, and continued to feed her after death. If the effect continued, it would clear her memory. She stared at his pitch-black pupils, which were deep and lustful, but full of wildness, with a clear and fierce aura that could not be hidden. She couldn't see through his emotions. He only heard him say, "You lost your memory in a car accident. I am your husband, legal husband, and my name is Shen Shiye." At that moment, Jiang Zhiwan's entire mind went blank. Is the handsome guy her husband? Is it legal to manipulate any posture? At this moment, Shen Shiye reached out to probe the temperature on her forehead. She trembled lightly, the temperature on the man's hand was very hot, perhaps because her body temperature was too low. She was so hot that her heart was startled. "What's my name?" Her voice trembled slightly. "Fu Suining," he said, then lowered his head to take a pen and wrote these 3 words for her. Fu Suining. 3 words, strong and vigorous, like others, full of wildness and desire, with a domineering and revealing font, very beautiful. The sharpness on his body is not hidden at all. She nodded and said, Yes, Fu Suining, living with a new identity, living by his side. The medical team came in to check Jiang Zhiwan's health. All physical indicators are healthy. Shen Shiye showed her ID card and marriage certificate, everything is real and void. But she really can't remember the past, it's a blank space, and even if she tries hard, she will feel headache and dizziness. She furrowed her brow. Shen Shiye looked at her and said, "Do you think I'll lie to you? No need to think about it anymore. With treatment, memories will be restored." He looked at Jiang Zhiwan with a deep expression in his eyes. After all, no husband wants his wife to not remember him. That's right. But perverts will deceive others into being his wife. But he shouldn't be like a pervert. Missing memories make people who have just woken up feel particularly insecure. Even if the person in front of her was really her husband, she wouldn't believe it. Jiang Zhiwan nodded as if she really believed it. She looked at Shen Shiye and said, "Excuse me, is our family wealthy?" Shen raised his eyebrows slightly and his eyes slightly curled upwards. This woman, even if she has amnesia, she still maintains her nature. Cunning, like a beautiful fox. P.S. Don't worry, everyone. The main text is written very clearly. The female lead pretended to die and was not sick. The new book is here, still sweet and charming. Remember to vote, comment and check in. The data of the new book is important, and it is still a joy of loving you Mua. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. This husband is really powerful. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. This husband is really powerful. He smiled and said, there's a little bit of money. Jiang Zhiwan's eyebrows were slightly raised, with a little bit of money, which was equivalent to having no money. Jiang Zhiwan got up from bed and just got off the ground, feeling soft and weak all over, with no strength at all. As if this body was not hers, it framed her soul. Fortunately, Shen gave her a hand. Jiang Zhiwan took the opportunity to grab his arm, and the muscles on the man's arm were particularly tight and powerful, exuding a rough and wild primitive sense of power. As soon as he lifted his eyes, he lazily looked at her. This feeling of righteousness, wildness, and purity made Jiang Zhiwan inhale, as if an electric current was flowing through her body, stimulating her nerves. She licked her lips vigorously. This husband is really strong. But because she hadn't been active for too long, a pair of flexible hands grabbed his arm, and she couldn't hold on for too long. Before she had a chance to have any special thoughts about him, she immediately collapsed into his arms. Shen lifted her waist with one hand, preventing her from continuing to slide down. But his breathing was also noticeably heavier. Jiang Zhiwan thought to himself, just help her catch her breath. Is this husband fake? He Shen. How do you feel? No strength. His voice was low magnetic, panting slightly with a hooked ending, and she lay on his undulating chest, this sexy and stimulating feeling, no strength. Jiang Zhiwan was almost completely embraced by Shen. The man's eyes darkened. Soft, really soft. He rolled his Adam's apple and said, take your time, sit back and lie down for a while. Jiang Zhiwan's voice was soft and soft, since we are husband and wife, do we have? She licked her lips and said, roundhouse. Women, life, it's important to wake up and ask these things clearly. Shen squinted his eyes and helped her lie back in bed. This woman is as wild as ever. He remained silent. Jiang Zhiwan raised his eyebrows to look at him. Why be silent about this kind of question? He really can't do it. You're talking. In the quiet room where two people are alone, desire and possessiveness have nowhere to hide. But he hid and hid, even suppressing the rhythm of his breathing. There is an unnamed fire quietly igniting indoors, and if not suppressed, it seems to be about to ignite. Shen Adam's apple rolled and he lowered his eyebrows and eyes. I'll go call a doctor and show you, he said. Jiang Zhiwan. Is her question so difficult to answer? After Shen left, Jiang Zhiwan looked at the layout and decoration of this room. Simple and moderate everywhere, this should be the master bedroom. There are all kinds of decorations available, but there is no photo taken between the two of them. Her name is Fu Suining. Jiang Zhiwan noticed that the tablet next to her was not locked. I searched online for the words Fu Suining. Fu Suining, the only daughter of the Fu family, is a young star in the 18th tier. She is a useless little vase with a plastic surgery face. She has undergone countless facelifts, and whoever looks good will be photographed. The whole thing is almost unrecognizable to my parents. She is delicate and pretentious, with a touch of green tea. She can't do anything and doesn't even need to show off when she's done poorly, because she's already rotten enough and has a bunch of black fans all over the internet. Because of being too flirtatious with green tea, I felt nauseous and deliberately drove into her at home after the car accident, I went to S country to recuperate and take shelter. Jiang Zhiwan's lips twitched slightly and said, Is this her? It's too his mother stupid, isn't it disgusting? Why didn't the car kill her? Jiang Zhiwan picked up the mirror in disbelief, looked at his own face, and pinched it from side to side. Is this a plastic surgery face? Which doctor did it? His technique is really his mother good. She saw her own Weibo on the tablet, with a bunch of people cursing her. It's been a long time since she posted on Weibo, and there are still many people cursing her. Facial plastic surgery, get out of the entertainment industry, really disgusting. My brother is also someone like you who can flirt with green tea. Don't take a look at your toad-like appearance. Plastic surgery ruined your brain. If you have money, please treat your brain. Jiang Zhiwan. If she is recognized on the street now, will she be beaten? One watch, after reading the manual voting for your small ticket, I have to go to the hospital during the day. I will revise the details of the manuscript later, and there will be updates when I come back at night. Remember to vote. 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 Thank you, Rosie, Disney Escape Princess, Sendrance Y. Rewards from Xiaoyer X, Z Chushi, and Jin Chuan, ranked in no particular order. Love you all. A whole big comparison heart. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Taking Medicine for Grandpa. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Taking Medicine for Grandpa. Jiang Zhiwan gradually regained her strength and was able to walk normally after 2 days. On the day when I felt that I had no problem, it was a rainy and gloomy day. The air was filled with dampness. Jiang Zhiwan felt that she had no problem. She sat on the sofa, with a straight waist and a thin and proud back. She looked at Shen and said, I told you, I don't take medicine. The man looked at her from a condescending position, his eyebrows furrowed. He seems to be losing his temper. He sat over and said in a friendly tone, this is a treatment, you have to eat it, be good. Very perfunctory coaxing. Jiang Zhiwan said, I am aware of my own body. As she spoke, she was about to get up and leave. At any rate, she doesn't listen. Just as he got up, the next second he was pulled back onto the sofa by the man holding his wrist. The rapid descent made Jiang Zhiwan panic in his heart. She hasn't had a chance to react yet. The chin was grabbed by someone, and then the bitter pill was handed into her mouth by the man with his fingers. This action is rude, with a sense of oppression, as if forcing people to submit to him, crazy and gloomy. Her mouth was forced to open, and her tongue was pressed by fingers, feeling soft, but it made Jiang Zhiwan feel nauseous. Cough, cough. Jiang Zhiwan choked on her saliva and coughed again, tears streaming down her cheeks and the ends of her eyes, blushing from coughing. In Shen Shiya's opinion, this color is too bright and tight. The man's eyes were dark and his Adam's apple rolled silently. But the hand movements did not stop. He handed the tissue and warm water to Jiang Zhiwan. Jiang Zhiwan clapped open the water and paper he handed him, and it fell to the ground with a clatter. The glass shattered, splashing with water and glass. It's like breaking the last line of defense between two people. Jiang Zhiwan squinted her eyes and looked at Shen Shiya, with a cold expression in her eyes. Are you my husband, or am I bound by you? His actions do not seem like a normal person. Shen Shiya clenched his hands tightly, with bulging veins on the back of his hand. Looking up, his voice sank slowly, but with a hint of laughter. Do you doubt me? I don't know why, but the faint smile on it made Jiang Zhiwan feel uneasy, and there were waves of coolness behind her. The two of them looked at each other. The air is silent and stagnant, and something seems to be about to explode. Ringtones. At this moment, the phone ringtone rang both timely and untimely. It's Jiang Zhiwan's phone. Caller ID display, Ji Lele, this is Jiang Zhiwan. Watched some news online. This is her agent. She lowered her eyebrows and eyes, not looking at Shen again. But I answered the phone. Now, this feeling of everything being unfamiliar and unknown makes her feel very uncertain. Suining, do you take on a job? Jiang Zhiwan. Work. Yes, but in country A, are you better now? If you're better, you can come back and participate in this program. What program? Walking into the wilderness with retired soldiers to survive. Jiang Zhiwan's lips twitched slightly. She has no interest in it at all. Moreover, once it is confirmed that she appears in the public eye, no one will want to kill her again. No response. Jiang Zhiwan refused. Paid. Jiang Zhiwan said, my family has money. Ji Lele. 5 million yuan. Jiang Zhiwan. When? Can you change your face any faster? Being open-minded when it comes to money is okay. Jiang Zhiwan deliberately asked questions and prolonged the phone call, hoping that Shen, who was sensible, would leave on his own. But she really didn't have to talk anymore. After hanging up the phone, Shen hadn't left yet. Turning his head, he looked at her with a dark and deep gaze. Jiang Zhiwan's heart trembled, unable to articulate the feeling in his gaze. It's crazy, she frowned deeply. What the hell are you doing? Shen said word by word, what do you say? He stood up and approached Jiang Zhiwan, saying, Fu Suining, give me medicine. Remember to vote after reading, run for the new book list, thank you. Beichen. Hello young master, brainy little rascal, Quan's little girl, Shirqing's reward, love you all, Mua, end of this chapter. Chapter 5. Accumulated 8 lifetimes of blessings. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Accumulated 8 lifetimes of blessings. Shen words instantly aroused Jiang Zhiwan's rebellious mentality. Whether in the past or now, she is completely twisted. She tugged at the corner of her lips and snorted coldly, even if you kill me, I won't take medicine. Shen licked his lips and smiled, not sure if he was angry. He reached out and tugged at the collar of his shirt, the veins on the back of his hand carrying the power of primitive wildness. Staring at Jiang Zhiwan, then you can give it a try. Even if I pour it, I have to give you the medicine. Immediately, he reached out and grabbed her chin again. It was very difficult for Jiang Zhiwan to resist, after all, he had a lot of strength. Like a mountain, no matter how hard she resisted, he remained motionless. Jiang Zhiwan lowered his head and fiercely bit into his tiger's mouth. She only felt that this man was simply a madman, as if going against his ideas was not enough, but she was actually a person who could do whatever she wanted. Hiss. Shen snorted lightly and let go of her. The voice was so muffled that it inexplicably carried a hint of desire. Jiang Zhiwan's eyes glared at him. Meanwhile, I also observed the changes in his expression. She doesn't know the person in front of her yet, but her intuition is that he is very dangerous. Even if this person is really her husband, it is not advisable to approach. I saw Shen narrow and long eyes looking at her, with a subtle smile on the bottom of his eyes. The corners of his lips also curled up, lazy and wild. He raised his hand and looked at her tiger mouth that had just bitten him. He whispered, if you don't take medicine, then don't take it. What do you kiss me for? Jiang Zhiwan. Is there anything wrong with his brain? Under constant stalemate between two people. Jiang Zhiwan still took the medicine. The cost is to take 1 pill and transfer 100,000 yuan. Jiang Zhiwan needs to see that there is enough money in her bank account to feel secure. After taking the medicine, Shen stopped pestering her. He seems to have his own affairs to handle and his own busy schedule. Jiang Zhiwan and Ji Lele have set a time for their return to China. She went out to stroll and see if there was anything she needed to buy back. Just as he arrived at the entrance, he was stopped by the security guard. Jiang Zhiwan looked at the security guard with puzzled eyes. The security guard politely said, "Sorry, young lady, you can't go out. Mr. Shen has instructed that you cannot step out of this gate without his permission." Ha! Jiang Zhiwan's tongue slightly pressed against her cheeks and she was angrily laughed at. "Shen Shiye, imprison me." The security guard lowered his head and shut up, afraid to speak. "Where is Shen Shiye?" "Mr. Shen went out today to discuss business." Jiang Zhiwan chuckled again. This matter is becoming even more bizarre. Are they really married? Jiang Zhiwan narrowed her eyes slightly and looked at the security guard, intending to pry a peek. "In your opinion, is Mr. Shen and I having a good relationship after marriage?" The security guard looked embarrassed and said, "What you said behind closed doors, I. Just say what you want." "Grandma." The security guard licked his lips and said, "We really don't know." "Then tell me your opinion." The security guard knows that if she doesn't say anything today, she won't let herself go. "I really don't know, but I heard from others that Mr. Shen married you. You should have accumulated 8 lifetimes of good fortune, so you should stay obediently at the Shen family and burn incense. You shouldn't be busy with things." Jiang Zhiwan. Requesting votes, babies, remember to vote. Thank you to Yang Xiaoman, Lei Busy, Quan Xiaoni, Sendrance.y for their tips. Muwa, end of this chapter. Chapter 6. Your body is not just yours. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 6. Your body is not just yours. Jiang Zhiwan sneered. She must have been unlucky enough to marry into the Shen family for 8 lifetimes. She picked up her phone and called Shen Shiye. The phone was answered over there, and Jiang Zhiwan's attitude was cold and stern. "I need to go out." Even if they are husband and wife, even if she has amnesia, her body should have memories of him. But Jiang Zhiwan was completely unfamiliar with him, and even somewhat disliked him. She trusts her intuition. He doesn't know what he's doing on his end. The music is loud and noisy, but his voice can be transmitted clearly to her ears through the clutter. Shen Shiye said, "Once you take the medicine, you can go out." Jiang Zhiwan said, "Why? Why limit my freedom? I have human rights." His voice was calm and emotionless. "You have human rights, and I don't restrict your freedom, but that doesn't mean you can joke about your body. You must take medicine. You should know that your body is not only yours, but also mine." Jiang Zhiwan. There are many his mother perversions. And she also felt the man's strength and reluctance to speak up. "Divorce, we must divorce him." Jiang Zhiwan stepped into the room and his voice suddenly changed tone. "Okay, I'll take the medicine. I'm not feeling well right now. As my husband, you should come back right away. I'll be back in a country in a few days, and you can drive me to buy some things," he said softly. There was a moment of silence over there, and in the end, only Jiang Zhiwan replied with 4 words. "I'm not available now." Jiang Zhiwan's voice rose a few tones and said, "No time." "Shen Shiye, where are you? What are you doing? You're fooling around with other women." She said in a strange tone, "I didn't get through to you on this phone, did I?" Fu Suining. Shen Shiye's voice turned a few notes cold. "What do you want to buy? I will come back tonight to take you there." Jiang Zhiwan snorted and said, "No need, I can go by myself. I'll just treat your husband as dead." After she finished speaking, she hung up the phone directly. "Go inside the house, take medicine and water out, and swallow them in front of the security guard." That posture seems to be able to swallow all the security guards in one gulp. After finishing her drink, she confidently wiped the water stains from the corners of her mouth. Her hair was disheveled, her eyes were charming, but she said sharply and coldly, "Can we go out now?" The security guard watched for a long time without getting back to his senses, and finally replied absent-mindedly, "Yes, yes." The security guard looked at Jiang Zhiwan's back. She walked casually and lazily, exuding a wild and charming aura. He felt a bit dazed, and even more so, he felt that she had done a great job with this plastic surgery, even changing her overall demeanor. Jiang Zhiwan bought a lot of things, and when she arrived at the mall, she wanted to buy everything she saw. The card belongs to Shen. It seems that only by swiping it hard can she relieve her hatred. But this day is not a beautiful day. Carrying big and small bags to the door, black clouds pressed against the city, and rain started pouring down. The whole sky turned dark and gloomy, and the damp soil air immediately rushed towards me, carrying the cold wind. She was wearing a white dress with a pair of high heels under her feet. White, originally a pure and clear color, was worn by Jiang Zhiwan and inexplicably exuded a breathtaking beauty. She is a beauty, a stunning beauty at first glance. A helpless appearance at the entrance of the mall, a whole destitute beauty. At the entrance of the shopping mall, there were people coming and going to see her, but there seemed to be a cool and wild aura that made people dare not get too close to her. She is so beautiful that it makes the heart tremble and the heart palpitate. A man boldly came over to ask if she needed a gift. Jiang Zhiwan's gaze swept over with a faint smile, gentle yet aloof, exuding a strong sense of oppression. Her red lips wriggled and her voice was clear and cold. Do you want to give me a gift, or do you want to have ulterior motives towards me? The calm and composed voice and gaze saw through everything, making the man feel helpless. He was wilting and preparing to leave. Jiang Zhiwan looked up at the rain and the pitch-black sky, and the cool breeze kept pouring into her collar. The sky is getting late, and heavier rain is rolling and brewing in the dark clouds. Shen, that ruthless bastard, will definitely not come to pick her up. Wait a minute, Jiang Zhiwan stopped him. You can give me a ride and I'll give you the fare. The man seemed to see some hope, his eyes lit up, and he was still somewhat flattered. Okay. He bent over and prepared to pick up the big and small bags that Jiang Zhiwan had bought. With a sharp brake, a black Maybach stopped in front of them. With the sudden braking, a burst of rain splashed onto Jiang Zhiwan's skirt, arms, and the things she had bought. The man was also splashed all over and got up ready to curse. But as soon as he raised his eyes, he met the cold and wild eyes of the man in Maybachry, full of wolf-like and aggressive nature. That gaze had a strong pressure, making it impossible for people to breathe. His heart couldn't help but thump and his legs became a bit weak. Shen Shiya's voice was low and cold, get lost. The man dared not say a word and rolled away in an instant. Immediately, Shen Shiya looked at Jiang Zhiwan and said, get in the car. He lit a cigarette, placed one hand on the steering wheel, and looked at her lazily. But the displeasure in his eyes was spreading and spreading. If Jiang Zhiwan rebelled against him, this displeasure would be rampant. Splashing water all over her body, I really don't know how unhappy he is. She stood still, with the cold wind constantly blowing through her. To be honest, her hands and legs were a bit stiff, but she still looked at Shen Shiya without moving. You wet my skirt, she said. Shen Shiya lowered his eyes and looked at her from bottom to top. She wore small high heels that exposed the back of her feet, with slender feet and clear blue blood vessels on the back of her feet. Those blood vessels inexplicably have a seductive feeling. Up is the slender and soft waist, beautiful collarbone and shoulder line. Especially, he wiped her body. He frowned, his uncontrollable and willingly sinking emotions made his calm breathing chaotic. He squinted his eyes and took a deep puff of smoke. Smoke wafted out from my nose and mouth, and on a rainy night, the light was dim. My Adam's apple rolled and I felt inexplicably ambiguous. Jiang Zhiwan gritted his teeth, and the dog looked like a dog, but the person was not very good. After spitting out his cigarette ring, his thin lips curled and he said, "What's wetting a skirt?" He smiled, somewhat mischievous and somewhat wild. "Where else are you?" He paused and laughed, "It's equally possible." Every word he uttered was low, magnetic and lazy, and his tone could easily strike the heart's edge. Every word made people tremble all over. It's like some people even know that the man is a scumbag, but they are still captivated by some of the charm in the scumbag. And ordinary people, if they hear such words, may already blush and heartbeat. Unfortunately, Jiang Zhiwan is not an ordinary person. She suddenly felt a little relieved that this masterpiece was her husband, so that she wouldn't miss it if she saw it. She smiled and said, "Really?" She bent down and lay on the car window in the rain, pinching the man's chin. "Then put away your appearance and go home, only show me," she said. The man's gaze swept down from her cheeks. The rain wetted her skirt. "Remember to cast your vote. For those who don't have a vote, there's still one chapter left tonight." End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Both Crazy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Both Crazy. He suddenly tugged at his lips with a mischievous smile, picked up a cigarette in his mouth, freed his hand, and opened the car door. In an instant, he pulled the person who had been drenched in rain into the car. She rolled into his arms, and the warm breath and cold fragrance from the man's body rushed into her nostrils. Heat surged up with blood, causing panic and turning red. She quickly wanted to prop herself up. Shen allowed her to move in his arms, and as soon as she got up, he grabbed onto her soft waist and pressed her heavily against his own leg. She let out a muffled groan, feeling a bit annoyed. She sat on his lap with her back to him, and Jiang Zhiwan turned her head to look at him. I saw him smiling, taking down the cigarette from his mouth, reaching out the car window and gently shaking the cigarette ash, his movements inexplicably seductive. And his other hand was still clasped around her waist, firmly pinning the person onto his leg. That gaze, half smiling, looked at her with a deep, paranoid and violent expression, pitch black and profound. And this smile made Jiang Zhiwan even more angry in her heart. She gritted her teeth, propped her hand back, and grabbed him fiercely. The man let out a groan in pain. But he did not let go of Jiang Zhiwan because of this. "If you don't let go, I'll make you have no children or grandchildren." "Ha!" Shen voice was filled with a painful aura. "Then give it a try. Both of them are crazy, wild, and never give in. Their deep-seated resentment never allows them to compromise." The man's hand gripped her rebellious wrist and tightened his grip fiercely. As long as he exerts force, her slender wrist will definitely break in his hand. This is undoubtedly painful. Jiang Zhiwan frowned. "Let go, what exactly do you want?" On both sides, neither side let go of the other. The pain of crazy growth is more memorable than flirting. "What do you want?" "I want you to be my wife obediently, and I want you not to talk to other men." Jiang Zhiwan will not compromise. In the end, Shen used clever force to make her hands relax. He lifted her hand and said, "You're so cruel." Jiang Zhiwan snorted and turned his head away from him, saying, "It's useless to keep it. It's useless." Jiang Zhiwan looked at him, raised his chin, and looked at him coldly. "It's just useless." The next second after speaking, she was fiercely pulled down by Shen. The touch on her lips was scorching, and her heart trembled fiercely. Her whole body froze, and she couldn't believe it. "Can't she just talk?" She quickly reacted and struggled, her voice stuttering as she was kissed. "Are you crazy? This is on the street. What does he want?" The car was parked on the street, and the rain outside was pouring heavily, hitting the car window with a crackling sound. You could clearly see the people coming and going outside. The man never let go of Jiang Zhiwan and said, "I'll cover it up for you." "What are you afraid of?" "You." Hiss. Before Shen could finish speaking, she fiercely bit his lips, and the smell of blood instantly spread to her mouth. She thought he would let go, but he's just a lunatic. He also bit her and broke his lip. Pain and heat intertwine, creating a sharp contrast between the cold air outside and the ambience inside the car. They seem to be better at biting, biting until only each other is left, biting until the other is convinced. In the end, Shen grabbed Jiang Zhiwan's neck and looked at the ripples and bloodstains on her lips. If you want to discuss useful or useless issues, you can only try it yourself. Facts speak louder than words, he said. His lazy voice was mixed with a hint of dullness, lingering in Jiang Zhiwan's ear, dark and crazy. Shen is a madman that cannot be provoked. The man licked his lips, and the woman's taste was captivating to the bone, savoring the essence. Her eyes were angry, her lips were glistening and slightly swollen, and her hair was messy. The dilapidated beauty is also very lovable. If she had the ability, she would definitely shoot him now. Looking at her like this, he felt a bit regretful and heartbroken. The man rubbed her lips fiercely with his fingertips and said, "How did you do it? Your mouth is hard and soft, so please dress me up and act coquettishly. Can I not let you go? Today's change is over. Baozi, who hasn't voted yet, remember to cast one vote. Please, Bao, thank you Sendrance Y. A brain-twitching bartender, a little fish X, red wine fruit pear, Quan's little girl, giving tips, love you all, Mua, end of this chapter. Chapter 8. Strong Revenge. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Strong Revenge. Jiang Zhiwan patted Shen hand and snorted coldly, why should I compromise with you? As a man, you shouldn't feel sorry for me. These two people are both stubborn and don't want to submit to anyone. After she finished speaking, she got up and sat in the passenger seat. This time, Shen did not stop her anymore. Jiang Zhiwan pulled down the passenger mirror and tidied up her wet hair in front of it. Her hair was messy and stained on her delicate and fair cheeks, and her eyelashes were wet with rain. She was charming and dilapidated. But it has to be said that this face is really beautiful. She reached out and touched her face again, once again marveling at the doctor's skill. This face was as natural as ever. She suddenly turned her head to look at Shen next to her and said, "Could you please get off the car and pick up the things outside? The smoke and fire between two people come and go quickly." Shen slowly unbuttoned his seatbelt and draped his coat over Jiang Zhiwan's body before getting off the car. Then, without saying a word, he got off the car and carried the things that Jiang Zhiwan had bought into the trunk. As soon as the trunk door was closed, Jiang Zhiwan looked at him through the rearview mirror. The person's figure was tall and superior, particularly good-looking. Among the crowd, it is definitely the most eye-catching one. Jiang Zhiwan licked his lips slightly. This man is good-looking, but he has a bad temper. It's really a bit hard to ponder. Just as Shen was getting ready to board the car, he had just walked to the driver's seat when he saw Jiang Zhiwan sitting in the driver's seat. She smiled at her with a bright smile on her face. The voice pretended to be delicate and sweet. "Mr. Shen, see you at home." Just as the words fell, the car drove away with a swoosh. In an instant, water splashed all over Shen body. Shen looked at the rear of the car, squinting dangerously. Jiang Zhiwan is still the same as before, regardless of whether she has any memories or not. Her revenge is too strong. After Jiang Zhiwan returned home, he went to take a hot bath. The plane ticket was bought for tomorrow. After taking a shower, she came out wearing a bathrobe with her hair half dry and half wet. The body is slender, and the skin on the calves looks smooth and tender. As soon as she came out of the bathroom, she saw Shen coming back from outside. His body is all wet. Jiang Zhiwan raised his eyebrows slightly, seemingly satisfied with his masterpiece. Especially when looking at Shen dark and calm face, her heart couldn't help but feel so happy. She arrived at the bottom of the building. Jiang Zhiwan lazily lay on the railing and blew a whistle to Shen from a high position. The man looked up with this voice. She raised her eyebrows slightly and smiled, "I came back quite quickly. You said if you take me to buy something and come back together, will it become like this now? Shen did not reply to Jiang Zhihuan's words, but walked upstairs with a gloomy expression, making it difficult to tell what his emotions were. With such an expression on his face, Jiang Zhihuan's heart couldn't calm down. All the nerves up and down the body were trembling. The person who knows the current affairs is a hero. Jiang Zhihuan licked his lips, turned around, and entered the house. With a snap, he closed the door and then locked it. This action is exceptionally smooth and flowing. Immediately afterwards, Jiang Zhihuan's voice came out. As a man, you can't be so stingy, you should be more magnanimous. And the response from outside to Jiang Zhihuan was a silent silence. She doesn't understand what kind of person Shen is. So for the current situation, she is a bit difficult to handle. However, in the current view, Shen is definitely a difficult person to deal with. I don't know how long has passed, but it's still quiet outside. Jiang Zhihuan tried to open the door, but there was nothing outside. Jiang Zhihuan. Where has this person gone? Shen finally came over before Jiang Zhihuan fell asleep. She was sitting by the bedside browsing Weibo, watching the people on Weibo cursing her, and she was still enjoying it. Upon hearing the sound of the door opening, Jiang Zhihuan's heart lifted. Looking at the entrance, the man was dressed in home clothes, holding medicine in one hand and water in the other, with no expression on his delicate face. Drinking medicine. Short 2 words, clear and cold. Jiang Zhihuan put down the tablet in her hand. I obediently went over to take some medicine without saying anything. If Shen doesn't cause trouble tonight, she will be obedient and obedient. The man watched as Jiang Zhihuan happily took the medicine. The red and tender lips were stained with water droplets. He rolled his Adam's apple slightly and then shifted his gaze away from Jiang Zhihuan. He lifted his foot and hooked a chair over, sitting by the bed. Jiang Zhihuan looked at him and said, "What are you doing?" "I've already finished drinking." The man crossed his legs and leaned back slightly, lazy and wild. Even wearing home clothes gave a strong sense of oppression. He spoke in a faint voice, "I have something to talk to you about." Jiang Zhihuan had an intuition that he wouldn't talk about anything good, but now it seems like he needs to listen carefully. So despite the countless disdains in my heart, I still sat peacefully on the bed, listening to what Shen had to say. I don't object to you going back to country A. You should be aware of your physical condition. There are still unresolved matters here, and we can't go back together. We will be 1 or 2 days later than you. Jiang Zhihuan shrugged, feeling that Shen might be staying to comfort and bid farewell to the warblers and swallows here. She spoke calmly, it's okay if you don't go back. As long as you give me enough money every month, I can take care of the mistress during the confinement. Shen eyes often sink when they are very obvious. Fu Suining, I'm not joking with you. His thin lips wriggled, don't say such things to disgust me. When you go back, if you dare to flirt and be known by me, then. Okay, I know. Jiang Zhihuan directly took his words and said, I will definitely abide by my principles. Don't worry. They are married and have a marriage certificate, but it is a hidden marriage, only a few people who should know. She also understood Shen identity. The young master of the wealthiest family in country A and the potential heir of a huge tycoon. If it weren't for hidden marriage, as his wife, who would dare to bully her in the entertainment industry? Isn't hidden marriage about maintaining a single persona and being able to wander around? Jiang Zhihuan agreed too readily, too obediently, which really made people feel uneasy. Shen furrowed his brows slightly and didn't say much. He just said, when you go back, if you have anything to do, call me. If someone bullies you and tells me, I'll solve it for you. The man said these words and paused slightly, no one should be able to bully you. Brave Miss Jiang. But he still felt uneasy in his heart. If it were the former Jiang Zhiwan, Shen would definitely be at ease. But now Jiang Zhiwan, he is not sure how much her ability has been retained. One watch, asking for tickets, hee thank you, Deep Sea, Rosie, the brain teaser, and Sendrance Y. The reward from Quan Xiaoni and Wanqing bark and smack, end of this chapter. Chapter 9. Familiarity and Unfamiliarity. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Familiarity and Unfamiliarity. The next day, at the airport. Jiang Zhiwan was wearing a light gray casual suit, and her high-waisted style made her look even more slender and slender. She was wearing a duckbill hat, appearing wild and spirited. It was Shen who took her to the airport. Before leaving, I explained a lot of things to her. Jiang Zhiwan only made a few perfunctory promises verbally. After sending her on the plane, the man's thin lips pursed tightly. I took out my phone and dialed a phone number. Have you found the whereabouts of Tiger Cat? Not yet, he's too cunning. Find him as soon as possible. You can't eat hot tofu in a hurry. I understand your desire to avenge Tangwan. It's best not to be too anxious. He said with heavy eyebrows and eyes, let you do it as soon as possible. He needs to resolve the situation here as soon as possible, and then follow Jiang Zhiwan back to China. She is alone in the country, and he is not at ease. Country A, with clear skies spanning thousands of miles. The plane landed, and Jiang Zhiwan went to the luggage carousel to pick up his luggage. She dragged her luggage in one hand and called the driver who came to pick her up with her phone in the other. Walk all the way towards the exit. You. Suddenly, a scream came from behind. Jiang Zhiwan's footsteps stopped and he turned to look over. I saw a beautiful girl with wide eyes staring at her, her pupils filled with surprise and disbelief. Are you still alive? She stepped back step by step, afraid and wanting to identify something with her. Jiang Zhiwan raised his eyebrows slightly. Is she also recognized? She didn't get hit by a car. It seems that many people are very disappointed. You are. Don't you know me? The woman exclaimed in surprise. Jiang Zhiwan tilted her head slightly and said, there may be too many people who dislike me. I can't remember everyone, so are you. Jiang Ye looked at her incredulously. I feel that the person in front of me is familiar, but not familiar. What garlic is Jiang Zhiwan pretending to be with her here? But she became suspicious again. Jiang Ye frowned and asked, maybe I misunderstood the person. What's your name? Jiang Zhiwan raised her eyebrows and said, what is my name and why do I have to tell you? Stranger, there's no need to know her name at all. After she finished speaking, she pushed the suitcase and was about to leave. Stop me. I haven't finished my question yet. Jiang Ye caught up and grabbed Jiang Zhiwan's wrist. Jiang Zhiwan almost shrugged off without even thinking about it. She has no cleanliness fetish, but she inexplicably dislikes the touch of this woman. She frowned and looked at Jiang Ye, feeling instantly that this girl was not beautiful at all, and even somewhat annoying. Jiang Zhiwan shook her hand so quickly that Jiang Ye fell to the ground. With a loud snap, there was a particularly loud commotion. Jiang Zhiwan felt outrageous, and she didn't put in much effort. Did she just fall to the ground? How could there be someone in this world who is even greener and whiter than her? Jiang Ye looked at her with tearful eyes in an instant and said, I just have some questions to ask you. You don't need to do this, do you? Jiang Zhiwan. What's wrong with her? She really appreciates it. Returning to a country, just landing, and still being entangled by inexplicable people. This movement attracted a lot of people from the airport to watch, picking up their phones to take photos of Jiang Zhiwan and pointing at her. Jiang Zhiwan gritted his teeth, this moral kidnapping is endless. She looked down at Jiang Ye and said, I don't know who you are, let alone who you recognize me as, but that's not the reason why you're bothering me. If you insist on lying down in this place today and not getting up to deceive me, Jiang Zhiwan sneered, I don't mind really sending you to the hospital to lie down. Here's a drop for the babies who are reading. It's so scary to open a new book, and I'm moaning thank you so much for commenting and checking in. Remember the first ticket, thank you very much. Bow. Thank you, Xiaoyer X, Quan Xiaoni, Sendrance Y. Why not go to sleep and watch the reward in your dream? Thank you all. I love you all, thank you very much. Bow, end of this chapter. Chapter 10. Men should use it when they should. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Men should use it when they should. On the first day of Jiang Zhiwan's return to China, he became a hot topic in the news. Ji Lele angrily rebuked her for causing such a thing at this critical moment. You are already a young celebrity outside the 18th tier. If you still cause such a thing, then the director of the variety show will not use you anymore. This was the opportunity one finally fought for you. Jiang Zhiwan sat on the sofa, holding a cup of coffee in his hand. Then this opportunity is gone, let's fight for another one. Ji Lele. How could she just stand up with such an ancestor? Is it so easy for you to have such a good opportunity? Ji Lele felt a bit resentful that he couldn't turn his iron into steel. Also, why did you have another plastic surgery? You even had it done like this. Jiang Zhiwan touched his face and said, what's wrong with this? Isn't it pretty? Ji Lele frowned and said, don't keep going through plastic surgery and changing your face. Even if you accumulate good looks on the show, you will still be left with no memory of your face changing. Jiang Zhiwan nodded and said, okay. This ancestor suddenly obeyed, and Ji Lele was stunned for a moment. Previously, not allowing her to undergo plastic surgery was equivalent to taking her life. And Jiang Zhiwan also couldn't understand why he had plastic surgery before his car accident, so his brain probably had some problems. Tonight, please tidy up and dress up properly. The director and producer of that program will come here for dinner tonight. Let's go meet today and see if we can have a relationship. The popularity of this program is very high. If you perform well, you may receive many programs in the future, and even some small production scripts. Jiang Zhiwan nodded. She is willing to do her job, and she does not reject it. At night. As night falls, the wind at night feels a bit cool. Jiang Zhiwan was wearing a red suspender dress, with black hair curled up with a perm. Today's outfit was particularly stunning and charming, with a Hong Kong-style beauty and a particularly atmospheric atmosphere. At the entrance of the clubhouse, there are 3 or 2 luxury cars parked, not to mention what kind of cars are parked inside this clubhouse. This is the most upscale club in Beijing, and entry requires a membership certificate. As soon as Jiang Zhiwan got out of the car, he stepped on his high heels and prepared to swagger in, but was stopped by Ji Lele next to him. Her beautiful eyebrows slightly raised, what's wrong? I don't have any members of this club, and it's impossible for you to, so the 2 of us have to get in. Jiang Zhiwan. Is it difficult to enter this clubhouse? Yes, Ji Lele said, even if the big shots from Beijing come, they still need to make an appointment. The director and his team have made an appointment for a long time, and it was a big shot who invited them to dinner. I only found out they were here through the grapevine that I bought with money. You must seize this opportunity. If it's really not possible, I'll take you to flip over the wall. Jiang Zhiwan looked up at the wall and found that everyone had taken protective measures. She pursed her lips slightly and said, forget it, I don't want to be electrocuted as black. I'll make a phone call. Ji Lele. What are you doing on the phone at this time? Once you make a phone call, you can go in. Ji Lele. Did you have a car accident that knocked your brain out? If you knew such a big shot, would we still need to come here and plead with the director? Jiang Zhiwan ignored Ji Lele and picked up his phone, ready to call Shen. This man has to use it whenever he needs to. Coincidentally, Shen Shiya's phone call came at this very moment. Didi, update the card, remember to vote, love you all, thank you for Kwan's small and crispy candy as a reward, Muwa, end of this chapter.